All right, this week's guest is former UFC bantamweight Michael Mcdonald, who joins us from California. News came out last week. Michael, doing me a solid and letting me know first that the UFC had officially released him, which I know caught a lot of people by surprise because, the UFC cuts fighters all the time. I mean, that's just roster management, but it's not often that you see a talented guy in his 20s who's been perennially ranked in a bantamweight division all of a sudden get cut with multiple fights left on his contract. So, Michael, I guess, just to get it started, thank you for joining us. Before we get into the big story of everything that went on, how are you feeling? The week after you cut ties with a promotion that you had been with for about 6 years, what kind of emotions do you have with this?
Well, first off, I've never heard, when you said former, that's the first time I've heard that. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I've always, my whole life, I always wanted to be a UFC fighter. I didn't want to be a fighter anywhere else. I've only worked with 3 fighting organizations my whole life. Gladiator Challenge, then Tachi Palace, then straight to the UFC. So it does seem kind of strange, but honestly, at this moment, I'm very relieved.
You're no longer with the UFC. So fill in the blanks. What is going on? You said that in our initial interview last week, you referred to them as maybe some dishonest business practices. You didn't want to work for the UFC anymore. The floor is yours. What went on here? I
was not planning on this. How we are today. This was not my plan, and in fact, I wasn't even planning to bring it up to anybody until you called me, and I was like, okay, well, there's going to be a story. I better call Sean Shelby and let him know what's going on, so that he doesn't just wake up and, find a story and it look like I'm, bad-mouthing him. I want to talk to him first.
And anyone who doesn't know, Sean Shelby is the UFC matchmaker. Just wanted everyone to know that.
He is like our personal contact, like the guy in charge of making fights happen. And so when it comes to my personal dealings with the UFC, Sean Shelby is generally at the top of the ladder for most fighters. And I would honestly say, aside from all the business that's happened, I would, for many years, I would consider Sean Shelby a friend. So anyway, you called me and asked me what's going on, and I explained to you that, I'm not willing to go into debt again because most of the time, most fights that I've had to go into debt to get to a fight and then pay off the debt afterwards. Because when you have a fight camp, if you're a professional and you're doing it right, you're going to dedicate all of your time to fighting, and you're not going to have a side job for the most part. And there's some awesome jobs that will allow you to do that properly. And, I know Stipe Miocic, he's a firefighter. He has never quit being a firefighter. And that's one of those unique and great jobs where, you can have the time and still make it work. Jobs like that aren't normal. And for myself, I dedicate 3 months dedicated of just training for a single fight. I don't want to go in there unprepared, and I want to have the most confidence I can that I've done everything that I possibly can to win. So anyways, for me, in our current living situation, our total living expenses are about $2,500 a month, which is not extravagant. And then if you want to upgrade all of the food and blah, 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 for a fight camp, it costs about $10,000. And for the most part, for most of my life, I've had to go into debt. And my wife has even, at times taken jobs to pay the bills while I am going out and training so that I can go fight in the UFC. And I'm not willing to do that anymore. So, I decided that I was just going to save up the money first. And I talked to Sean Shelby for about an hour. And our agreement was he's totally fine with the truth, even if it paints a picture that's not exactly pleasurable. But as long as it's true, he said, I can't say anything about the truth, Mike. As long as what you say is true, then I can't say a word, and go on and do your story. And also, he throughout this hour, he gave me options of, things that I could do to cut my costs, and a lot of them aren't what I was willing to do. He, suggested, hey, you might be able to, move to another training camp. You might be able to move to another management. And I talked to him about all those money issues, but these are people that I trust, and their rates are not unreasonable. They're very reasonable, and I don't want to leave the people who I trust, just leave all my family and everything, my whole life, just so I can hopefully pay for a training camp. It just doesn't sit right with me. So I told him, I said, hey, I'm just letting you know, this is why I'm not taking a fight right now, as I am working right now. I'm working full time. I said I haven't been able to even train, Sean, since my fight. I was unhealthy for a couple of months after my last fight, and then by the time I was healthy, I wasn't healthy fast enough to take a fight before my money ran out, so I had to start working. And so he said, okay, no problem. And then he said, well, hey, Mike, like how much? He was like giving me a motivational talk about, hey, just stick into it. And I said, well, Sean, I'm just letting you know, it's not going to happen right now, and I'm sorry, but you guys are just going to have to wait. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm making more money woodworking right now. I'm profitable in fighting, and fighting I'll either be doing good or I'm losing everything. But I'm profitable in woodworking right now, so I'm going to do that. And if I save enough cash, then I'll get there. And he says, okay, well, let me see what I can do then, because I told him 0 of my bills are being paid from fighting. And so he said, okay, well, let me see what I can do. And I didn't expect that. And he said, would you give me a weekend? I said, that's no problem. I don't mind at all. So and you remember I called you back. I said, hey, he said, give him the weekend. So we're just going to wait, and, let's wait and see what they say. And I don't want an article, produced until we get the full response here and see what they have to say. Well, you can testify to that, Brent, that weekend was not just a weekend. And that weekend, turned into about like 3 or 4 weeks just for that one topic. And, my management would call Sean, and I called him a couple of times and texted him a few times. He said, hey, I'm sorry, I'm just really busy right now. I got to do this. And he always had a good answer, good reason. But, that 3 days turned into like 3 or 4 weeks. And it did make me feel, first off, not like a priority, but it made me feel like I couldn't, like I was having trouble trusting even, the time frame which he's giving me, because it doesn't seem like a really big problem to just go and talk to your boss, pick up the phone for Sean Shelby to pick up the phone and talk, and, to his boss or whoever he needs to have accountability with to do that. And so from the very beginning, I started to get this little vibe of, I want to be able to take his words literally, that hey, 3 days means 3 days, and I can't raise your contract means I can't raise your contract, and that's fine. And then, so I want to be able to trust. So, and also let me say this, there are a couple of faults on my side, on my management side, that I want to say like right now before I get any further. First off, I understand that I have not been the most active, and yes, it doesn't, for the reasons of inactivity is injuries and money. But I understand that I haven't been the most active, which doesn't make them as much money. I totally understand that, and from a promotion standpoint, that's not good, and it's not good for them, and it's brought on by me. And second off, this is another issue. In the middle of all this craziness of me starting to feel like I couldn't trust the yeses and the nos and the exact information that they were giving me, in the middle of that, I put in a request for my management to ask them for my release. In the second conversation that I had, or when these kind of came together, and this big moment's coming together where my management's been working for almost 2 months with the UFC and trying to work with them and seeing what can be done, because like I said, they have a problem with the money that I've been getting. They have a big problem with. My problem wasn't so much that. My management comes back to me and says, hey, listen, Mike, the UFC says they're willing to raise your contract $10,000 on each side. I said, okay, that's great. They said, you have to fight within 2 months. Actually, what it said, I talked to Sean Shelby, and he said the date that he was talking about was May. So, yeah, that was almost a month ago. So it was less than 2 months they wanted me to fight. He wanted me to fight, I forget who it was, but basically it was the toughest guy that they could find, and they wanted it to be 2 months. Now, I don't have a problem fighting the toughest guy you could find. I've been doing that since the beginning of my career. So that's no problem to me to fight the toughest guys. That's what I've been doing. So the problem was in 2 months, because I just got done telling Sean Shelby that I hadn't trained since my last fight. Sean tells me, hey, I don't have $10,000 to give you. Okay, that's fine. And then says, you know what? Let me see what I can do after an hour conversation. Or let me see what I can do. Okay, no problem. Then after this, he says, okay, we can raise your contract $10,000, but you have to be willing to do something that you've been doing since the beginning of your career. But I know you can't do it right now because you haven't been training. And that was a condition on getting the contract raised. And basically my response was, I can't accept that. I can't accept that. And I told my management that. Why would they give me a condition which they know I can't accept? I talked to Sean Shelby on the phone, and I told him that I haven't trained since my last fight because of this whole issue. So why would he give me an offer with a contingency of fighting in 2 months in May when he knows that I can't accept that? And I said that's unreasonable. That's a dishonest offer. You're giving me an unreal offer. That's not a real offer. You're just spitting in my face. That's not a real offer. And he said, well, the other option is you can keep the exact same contract, but they'll give us a little bit more leniency, and we can have some say in our next opponent. And I said, well, I guess we don't have a choice then. Because I can't take the other offer. I heard 2 offers, and the other offer was exactly what's where we're at. So nothing changes. So I said, well, I guess that's what we have to do. And he said, either way, Mike, they want to start talking about a date when you're going to be able to fight. I said, I can't do that. I can't talk about when I'm going to fight because, first off, I haven't been training. So I'm not even in shape to negotiate that. And second off, the money isn't working yet. I just made I just moved into a new shop and made this profitable in 2 months. And now I have to make sure everything is working properly and functioning right for me to be able to even take a leave. I can't give you a date. I'm sorry. You're gonna have to just wait. If you want me to give you a date, then you can help out with my problem. I'm not asking you to, but you can't order me around, if you're not willing to help out with the problem. 4 days later, apparently they got upset that almost like that we were serious. Like I think that Sean thought I was bluffing, that I was lying when I said, no, you're just going to have to wait, and it could be a year. And I was being honest. My no is a no, and I was not being dishonest, and that was complete honest answer. And I've been honest since the beginning. And I don't think that he thought that was true. I almost think that he thought I was trying to play this thing just to get some more cash for my contract. But I'm not. I was honest from day one. There was no business tactics of bargaining tactics or anything like that. I was being honest. And so after about 3 days, when we let the issue die, then I get a call back from my management and says, hey, they're saying they want an answer right now, or they're going to release you. And I said, and by the way, this is 2 weeks after I requested to my management that they asked for my release. So I said, well, I'll take the release. And they said, are you sure? There's no going back. I said, no, give me the release. I wanted it 2 weeks ago. I'm ready. I'm tired. And then why would they give me an offer that they knew I couldn't accept? I said, this was supposed to take a weekend, and it's now taken 2 months. And every time that we're supposed to get something done, it's some new way that it's drawn out. They're stalling. This is time that I'm never going to get back in my life. It's wasted time, wasted effort. And if they're not really interested in working on me with this problem, why did they even bring it up? And they said, okay, fine, we'll give you a release. And I said, okay. And then nothing was said. And so I say again, hey, I call my management, hey, get those freaking release papers, dude. I feel like they're stalling again. If they let their yes be yes and let the no be no, they can send over the papers any moment, and they're dragging it out a week. Get me the release papers. If they're going to release me, let them release me so we can start looking around, please. So eventually, Sean sent them over, and we signed them, and that was the story. And then I had another conversation with Sean. Sean Shelby called me, and we had another hour-long conversation. So we had an hour-long conversation at the beginning and at the end. And this conversation at the end, Sean Shelby was upset because he said, I've never lied to you. Why would you say that to me now you're lying, and you're saying something about me that I didn't do. And we replayed the events that happened from start to finish. And this was news to me. I didn't even know that my release request never made it. This was new that he told me. We went through the beginning and the end, and I told him, Sean, you told me that you didn't have $10,000 to give me. You couldn't raise my contract. And then you say, okay, we can, but you have to do something that you've been doing since the beginning, but you can't do right now because you know that I just told you that I couldn't train. And he says, well, if you guys would have just come back and said the money's fine, but we need more time, then this wouldn't have been different. And the whole time, like this is the whole story was since the very beginning of the conversation. You know, they're putting it back on us. If you would have done this, Mike, if you would just leave your management team, if you would just leave your training camp, if you would just leave your home and go to American Top Team, if you would just do this, then everything's fine. And that's again why I'm feeling like this is dishonest. Like they act like Sean is acting like he wants to help. And then everything that he says is just, Mike, you fix it. You could have done different. You could have done different. And then he's saying the same thing. If you would have come back to me with another response, then this wouldn't have happened. And I'm like, dude, why would you give me that request if you knew I couldn't accept? And honestly, this is, aside from this, like what happened, I think this is really what it is. It's kind of just like that lowballing thing of like, hey, what's the lowest you can go? $70 when you can really go down to like 40. And I think it's just normal business practices, but I don't really think that's honest. And when somebody says, what's the best you can do, and you give them something that's not the best you can do, that's really not being honest. And so anyways, at the end of this, he says, you never asked for your release. I put in that release. I said, what are you talking about? I said, maybe it never made it to you, but I asked for a release 2 weeks ago, Sean. And he says, no, that never released to me. He said, I offered your release as a bluff. And this was his wording, his exact wording. I offered that release as a bluff because you guys were taking so long, and I wanted to get this ball rolling. I was tired of spending time on it and wasting my time. So I offered your release as a bluff so you guys would get the ball rolling. And I said, okay, stop, Sean, right there. This is another reason why I'm feeling like this is dishonest. A bluff is dishonest. That you're saying that. Do you want to be released as a way to get me to do something that you want me to do, instead of just asking me, hey, let's get this ball rolling, guys. I'm tired of spending time on it. Why would you lie to me? And he goes, I never lied. Don't say that. I said, okay, you know what, Sean? I won't say that you lied, but I will tell you that feels dishonest. A bluff does not seem honest to me. That seems dishonest. He said, okay, well, let me change my wording. I shouldn't have said bluff, because if it was a bluff, then when you would have said, okay, well, then let me take my release, then I would have retracted. That would have been a bluff if I would have retracted it. And I said, I don't agree at all. I don't agree. And he kept going on with it. And he says, I just wanted it to be done. I didn't think we would really be here. I didn't really think that you would be released. So he keeps saying, he said like 4 times, bluff, bluff, bluff. And he says, no. I mean, I don't mean that. I meant something else. I'm just poor wording here.
I think fighters in particular are saying to themselves collectively right now, and at this time in the sport, they're almost collectively saying, well, this is not just normal business, though. This is us getting into a cage and competing. And it's different than just, Brett Okamoto renegotiating his salary with the ESPN. It's a little bit, it's slightly different. And so while you do anticipate some level of dishonesty in any business negotiation, I think in this particular case, you reached a point where it was getting so much that you just completely wanted to walk away. Is that a good way to describe sort of, I guess, in general what happened here?
I guess, and I would say this. I do appreciate the level of effort that Sean did give me, because I know he wouldn't give that to most people. And so this is the real confusing thing is I've been Sean's friend for years. And I know that I've been treated better than most.